Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history, the only show where we take a date on the calendar, shake it like a snow globe, and watch 8 centuries of chaos fall out in slow motion. Today is January 2nd, because even history likes to wait one day after New Year's before doing anything important. January 1st is for resolutions. January 2nd is for consequences. And wow, does this date love consequences. Empires fall, nations are born, scientific theories get roasted alive, and humans continue inventing machines that will absolutely replace us one day. So buckle up, pour that lukewarm coffee, and let's dive into the historical dumpster fire that is January 2nd. Segment 1, the fall of Granada. Congrats, you played yourself, 1492 edition. January 2nd, 1492. The day the Emirate of Granada surrendered to Ferdinand and Isabella, ending nearly 800 years of Muslim rule in Iberia. 800 years. That's not a reign, that's a durable good. That's the refrigerator of medieval kingdoms. So, Boabdil, the last emir, hands over the keys to the Alhambra. Keys. Literal keys. Imagine being the final boss of an empire and your last act is basically returning an Airbnb before checkout time. The treaty promised religious tolerance. And then Spain immediately said, just kidding, faster than a politician walking back a tweet. They went from, we respect your traditions, to convert or pack your bags in record time. It's the original bait and switch. And the kicker? Once the Reconquista wrapped up, Ferdinand and Isabella suddenly had spare time and money. And what do? They fund Christopher Columbus. That's right. The fall of Granada is basically the historical equivalent of someone finishing one bad idea and immediately starting another. If there was ever proof that one event can ruin 2 continents at once, it's January 2nd, 1492. Segment 2. The Battle of Assunpink Creek. Washington outsmarts the British with camping tricks. January 2nd, 1777. George Washington pulls one of the greatest strategic pranks in military history. After beating the British at Trenton, he stands his ground. Cornwallis marches in like an 18th century Jim Bro, ready to crush the old fox. Washington's army faces 3 British attacks at a narrow bridge. Basically, the Revolutionary War version of You Shall Not Pass, but with more lead and less wizardry. Cornwallis goes to bed saying, we'll bag him in the morning. Meanwhile, Washington says, hold my powdered wig, keeps the campfires blazing, and tiptoes around the British Army with 7,000 men and cannon wheels wrapped in cloth like they're moving out at 3 a.m. so the landlord doesn't hear. The next morning, the British wake up and Washington is gone, on his way to win at Princeton. Imagine the embarrassment. You think losing your parking spot is bad? Cornwallis lost a whole continent. Segment 3. Georgia ratifies the Constitution. Please help, we're surrounded. January 2nd, 1788. Georgia becomes the 4th state to ratify the Constitution and does it unanimously. 26-0. That's not civic enthusiasm, that's a cry for help. See, Georgia wasn't debating philosophy like Virginia or New York. Georgia was stuck between the Creek Nation, Spanish Florida, and the feeling that nobody in Congress even remembered they existed. If your state motto is basically send backup, of course you want a stronger federal government. Georgia ratifying the Constitution is the historical equivalent of clicking I agree without reading the terms because something outside just made a noise. Segment 4. Port Arthur, the siege that told Europe, your era is over. January 2nd, 1905. Russia surrenders Port Arthur to Japan, and every European empire collectively clutches its pearls. The siege is brutal. Japan uses massive howitzers, trenches, machine guns, basically the prequel to World War I, but with worse weather and more facial hair. After losing a key hill, the Russians are pinned, starving, and demoralized. But here's the twist. They still had supplies. Their commander just gives up. Russia sees this and says, court-martial time. The fall of Port Arthur proves Japan is a major power, and Russia is, well, Russia. The defeat helps trigger the 1905 revolution, because nothing motivates a population like losing to a country they spent decades underestimating. European powers suddenly realize the world has shifted. Japan realized it too. Russia took a little longer. Segment 5, Daguerre, Draper, and Vulcan. When science says, oops, my bad. January 2nd has a special place in the scientists thought they saw something but actually didn't category. First, in 1839, Louis Daguerre photographs the moon for the first time, and then his lab burns down. The universe clearly looked at early photography and said, not yet. Then in 1860, Urbain Le Verrier, high off predicting Neptune's existence, announces a new planet named Vulcan, orbiting between Mercury and the Sun. He's wrong. Very wrong. The planet does not exist. But textbooks spend decades talking about it like it's real. This is the scientific equivalent of a group chat rumor getting out of control. Eventually, Einstein shows up in 1915 like the cosmic substitute teacher and says, actually, it's space-time curvature. Newton's laws get dunked on harder than a political candidate on Twitter. January 2nd, the day science was both visionary and very, very confident about things that weren't there. Segment 6, Luna 1 and Stardust, when missing the moon turns into winning history. January 2nd is weirdly huge for space exploration. In 1959, the Soviets launched Luna 1, aiming for the moon, and missed by 6,000 kilometers. 6,000. But because of that mistake, Luna 1 becomes the first human-made object to escape Earth's gravity and orbit the sun. Imagine trying to parallel park and accidentally inventing interstate travel. Then, in 2004, NASA's Stardust flies past Comet Wild 2, collects dust, and brings it home, including glycine, an amino acid, the ingredients for life. Meanwhile, I can't even bring Tupperware back to the right kitchen cabinet. January 2nd proves that space missions, like cooking, sometimes produce their best results when something goes wrong. Segment 7, RUR. The robots begin their union drive. On January 2nd, 1921, the play RUR premieres in Czechoslovakia and gifts the world the word robot, derived from a term meaning forced labor. Yep, from day one, robots were branded as overworked employees. No wonder every sci-fi writer assumes they'll turn on us. Chapek's robots aren't metal. They're biological constructs, built in vats like artisanal nightmare sourdough. The play ends with a robot uprising and the extinction of humanity, which in 1921 probably sounded absurd, right up until modern tech CEOs began saying things like, AI won't replace you, but people who use AI will. January 2nd, the day we named our future overlords. Segment 8, Soleimani, the strike heard around the world. January 2nd, 2020, U.S. time, the United States kills Qasem Soleimani, head of Iran's Quds Force, in a drone strike near Baghdad airport. This wasn't just a military action. It was the diplomatic equivalent of flipping the Monopoly board mid-game. Soleimani wasn't just a general. He was Iran's strategic architect, influencer, fixer, and occasional regional fire starter. Taking him out jolted the Middle East. Iran retaliated with ballistic missiles on U.S. bases. Nobody wanted a war, but everyone suddenly looked like they were in one. January 2nd strikes again, the date that refuses to mind its own business. In conclusion, January 2nd is the sequel nobody asked for, but everyone gets anyway. It's where empires collapse, generals bluff, scientists guess, robots debut, and world powers stare each other down across desert runways. It's a day that says, welcome to the new year. Hope you warmed up first. History doesn't wait for your resolutions. It starts on January 2nd, ready or not. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and join us next time on Klepper's Corner Today in History, where the past is messy, hilarious, and constantly auditioning for relevance.